The traits of the Game of Thrones houses are not as well defined as something like the Hogwarts houses, because obviously people are born into them as opposed to being sorted into them. Also, there are obviously characters from the same Game of Thrones houses with completely opposing traits, so this might not make much sense. ESTP and ISTP, House Baratheon. Aggressive, bold, and brave. They like to face things in a direct and head-on way. Aren't fans of playing politics and backstabbing. They prefer to settle their disputes on the metaphorical or literal battlefield and win. Can be hot-tempered and overly passionate at times, and definitely stubborn and determined when locked onto a goal. ESFJ and ISFJ, House Mormont. Very loyal, perhaps to a fault at times, with lots of integrity. They're going to stick with the people they care about through thick and thin, and can seamlessly fit into that role of supporter or even advisor. They have a kind of street-smart intelligence and a worldliness, being able to draw upon, learn the lessons of, and put into practice the insights of their experience. They're also tough people who aren't really going to back down, even in the face of the odds being against them. INFJ and ENFJ. House Tyrell. Well-mannered, but concealing a certain cunning. Savvy and politically minded people who can, should they wish, turn their subtle people skills into manipulation. Tyrells make their way in the world by cultivating strong relationships, in this case, with the most powerful people in Westeros. They can definitely be aristocratic in their taste and demeanor as well. They are people who navigate through the halls of power via interpersonal maneuvering. The politics of human nature is second nature to them. ENTP, House Greyjoy. Whilst many of the other houses spend much of their time trying to shore up strongholds and consolidate rigid power, the Greyjoys are perpetually on the move. Their flexibility and agility often gives them a huge competitive advantage over their enemies. The character of Euron Greyjoy, in the books mainly, and not so much in the show, exemplifies this approach. His power comes from the fact that he has travelled the world more than the people he's coming up against. Perhaps more than anyone else, actually. He has explored things that other people are not even aware of, let alone knowledgeable about, and as a result, has creative counters to things that people thought were unstoppable. In a time of rigidity, no other house captures this sense of fluidity that ENTPs have. INTP, the Maesters. People who are philosophically attached to the acquisition of knowledge and insight. Their lack of interest in the power plays and political maneuvering of the various houses is made even more ironic given the fact that they hold information and knowledge in the Citadel that would easily swing the balance of power, often functioning as advisors and wise sages who guide budding rulers and even kings and queens. The fate of many people often hangs on their word. No other people in Westeros are greater exponents of the notion that ultimately knowledge is power. ENTJ and INTJ. House Targaryen. Great conquerors don't always make great rulers. The Targaryen Empire definitely combined both of those things very effectively, at least for a few centuries. They are people who are characterized by pursuing their goals, sometimes in an obsessive or pathological way. To them, their ambitions and overarching aims are self-justifying, and they take it upon themselves to bring them into existence one way or the other. Often capable leaders and strategists that have absolutely no problem being at the top of the power hierarchy. ESFP and ISFP, House Martell. Provocative, adventurous, and sometimes deadly. Fond of the sensory, sensual, and physical joys that the world has to offer, new experiences are often a priority for them. Fierce fighters who will happily walk into the lion's den to avenge their loved ones or defend the principles and values they stand for. Are much less uptight and judgmental in their culture than the other houses. They are exponents of the live and let live philosophy. Unless you cross them. ENFP and INFP. House Reed. One of the more mysterious houses in Westeros. Both mystical and quite reclusive people who will, when attacked and provoked, passionately defend the people and lands they are sworn to protect. They are shrouded in myth in many ways. After all, no one knows exactly where their home base and stronghold even is. In fact, it's essentially a floating structure that can be moved through the swamplands in which they live. Perhaps no other house in Westeros combines such unusual traits of being loyal, creative, and also magical. They are extremely important to the main plots, without people necessarily realizing to what extent. ISTJ, House Stark. Loyal, and despite seeming reserved and level-headed, when someone acts in an unprincipled way or betrays them, they can react intensely to it, even in a rash and hot-headed way. When someone defies tradition, it's off-putting to them. Being able to simulate possibilities and navigate the topsy-turvy world of political machinations is not their strong point, often getting caught out out by the more slippery types among them. They are followers of well-earned and lived-in wisdom, and despite the fact that might make them victims of more unconventional and creative operators, over time, following that wisdom often works out in their favour. ESTJ, House Lannister. The Lannisters, as a whole group, are rulers and managers. They are people who are in charge in various ways. Even before they are the ruling family of Westeros, Tywin was the hand of the king and essentially already running the show for Robert Baratheon. They're all principled in certain ways, and this tends to centre on their family, for whom they'll often do terrible things if they need to defend them. Despite the fact that in many ways they completely throw out convention behind the scenes, publicly at least, they do try to maintain the appearance of traditionalism. Love them or hate them, when it comes to combining creativity and organisational skill to rule and win, they're amongst the very best. If you want to see more videos like this one, or have any suggestions, let me know by subscribing, liking, and leaving a comment down below. All of those things make a huge difference to the channel.